Can't believe it, but it's already Friday again. And you know what that means? It's time for some new fresh finds. If you tuned in last week, it was absolutely crazy. This week it's nowhere near as crazy, but we did get a few really cool things that I am excited to show you guys and very excited to get onto the site. Let's get into it and see what we got this week. This is a good one to start with. Fender Mustang, 1966 reissue. This board is crazy. This is exactly what I personally look for when looking for nice cuts of rosewood. Really, really great example. Very top-notch craftsmanship across the board on this one. We got this Yamaha MX-61 workstation, which I have not got a chance to play with yet, but these are usually pretty great units and have a lot of cool sounds in them and do a lot of a good variety of functionality. Whether you're looking for something with the built-in sounds, you want to use this as a controller, or you want to utilize this as almost a module and control it with MIDI. There's a lot you can do with these, and always good to have a good quality one of these around. Unfortunately, this did not come in with any kind of case or bag, but we have an Alvarez baritone. This one is the ABT 60. Needs a little bit of setup, but very excited to get into this one and get it on the bench. I've been fortunate enough to have a few of these of the various Alvarez baritone acoustic models, and they've always sounded really good and always set up really nicely, so I'm sure this will be no exception. This is one of my favorites from this week. This is an Orville Les Paul, and a beautiful one at that. Awesome flame finish here. We haven't got a chance to get it on the bench, if you can't tell from these strings, but I just know this is going to set up super well and be a really great Les Paul. If you're not familiar with Orville, it was basically a run of guitars that Gibson did in Japan, and they were designed to be somewhere in between the Epiphone and Gibson USA range, but the quality of craftsmanship was so good that they were competing super well with proper American Gibson guitars, and they put these out of production for too long, and after owning a few of these now, I definitely see why these are all the Les Paul that an American one would be, and you know, they're no compromise guitars, and if you know anything about Japanese guitar manufacturing, you know they're very much, you know, no compromise and a lot of precision. This is a great example of that. Here's a classic. I have a Moserite Adventures model. Has the certificate of authenticity, original hardshell case, obviously. All original, really clean. This is a really fun guitar. Made in California. Here, this one is a great kind of mainstay piece. Classic, just Gibson Les Paul standard. Really cool top. Got some flame going on there. Nice board. It checks all the boxes for Les Paul, and it's a really fun one at that. I know this one's gonna end up going to a good home, and it's one of those that you're gonna get and probably keep forever, so lots of fun.
What year is that one?
I don't know. 2000 something. Gibson made sure that the headstock serial number in print was as faint as possible on that one.
That's how you know it's a real one.
Right. If the serial number, not a joke, if you find a Gibson and the serial number is super easy to read, especially if it's in white and not in the color of the guitar, that's the first indication it might be fake, because on a real Gibson you can barely read the serial number, and that is exactly how it should be. Not saying that's correct or that's what they should do, but that's what you should see when looking at a proper example. They always like to, when they do the finish after, end up kind of cutting into the lettering or numbering, and makes things very hard to decipher. So gotta keep you on your toes. Another thing I always notice is that on the counterfeit ones is they always end up doing the serial in like white, where the rest of the guitar will be maybe red on the back or whatever. And it's a surefire sign that it's like, yeah, that's not how Gibson would do it. And before you get into anything else, you can sometimes tell with just that. So to continue the Les Paul trend and also build on the trend of Japanese-made Les Pauls, this is a really cool Reco custom. And this is really fun because obviously it's a custom, but it's got a burst finish still, so it kind of blurs the lines of having the vibes of a standard, but all the specs of a custom. And it's pretty lightweight too. Really, really cool. This is kind of an interesting one. This is a Fender Squire series. Not a Squire, but a proper Fender from the Squire series, made in Korea in 1992. Obviously this one needs a lot of setup work, and you know, it's missing a string, so we don't love that. But once we get this one on the bench, it'll be a really fun player. For those not familiar, kind of in the early 90s when I think Fender was still figuring out what they wanted their Squire line to be, whether coming out of Mexico or Korea or wherever, they had these Squire series where they kind of blurred the lines between the standard Mexico stuff and then the other import Squire stuff. And for the most part, these were like Mexico and Korean made guitars with cheaper import parts put on them. So a lot of people will pick these up and use these as kind of a good like starting place for modding, and they'll throw whatever electronics they want or new tuners or whatever. And these are great for that because the woods are always really good and they always end up playing really well. So it kind of gives you a great place to start if you want to put your own choice of pickups or have some fun with it. Really fun projects. And they're actually, these Korea ones are really hard to find too. I've maybe found 3 in all the years of doing this, so always cool to come across one of these. All right, here we have a now discontinued Squire J Mascis Signature Jaguar. Really, really great guitar. These are really, really cool, and I can't say they're underrated because I feel like it's pretty common knowledge now that these were striking way above their price class when they were new, as they've appreciated in value quite a bit and are still popular even though they're not making them anymore. So always cool to find an example of one of these, as they're not too common anymore. They're not super rare by any means. Like, there's a lot of these out there, but being that they're discontinued and they're guitars that I usually don't see people selling, they buy them and they keep them because they play so great and they strike so far above where most Squires in this price range would, that kind of there's no reason to get out of these, which is why I think we've seen the value on these rise so dramatically in the last year or two. So most of these look like basses, but they're not. I just don't know where the rest of our guitar bags are, which is going to be fun digging through the back room and finding those, because I know there's probably 100 more of them. But we have a Fender Blackout Telecaster, and we've had one of these before, but these are pretty hard to find. These are from their, what you usually see with like a flame maple top, their special edition FMT line, but this is just a Fender special edition Blackout Telecaster. So set neck, I think this is a Korea one. Yeah, this one's made in Korea, and yeah, good things all around. Seymour Duncan pickups are stock from the factory. Pretty thin neck profile too. I really like this one. And to match this one, we have my favorite guitar from the special edition line of set neck Telecasters. And if you know my taste, then you may already know before I take this out. But this is one of the infamous spalted maple examples. This one's got a really, really cool top on it. I've had a number of these in my own collection over the years and had a couple come to the shop, and there is definitely a lot more demand for these guitars than there are these guitars in circulation. So anytime I can get my hands on one, I do it. If you have one you want to sell, you know how to get a hold of me. This is great, and this is a very good example of one of these. Like I said, I've had a bunch, and this is great. Another one I'm very excited to get on the bench. This is an Epiphone SG, but made in Japan, and has classic open book headstock, which is really, really cool. This thing is exceptional. Like, I'm very rarely one to say this with Epiphones or anything that's not proper Gibson or proper Fender, but when these companies are making stuff in Japan for that Japanese market, it's at the same quality they're making it. The American companies are making stuff for the American market, so this holds up against all my Gibson SGs super, super well as far as fit and finish and all that good stuff. So I'm sure once I get this playing, it's going to be the same story. So very grateful to have this in, and I would feel very good about taking this out on the road and touring with and stuff. It'll be a very solid guitar for years to come. The last guitar we have here, this is a Fender Fat Telecaster. It's a special edition guitar from 1994. Originally I thought this was just some sort of Mexi Tele that had been modified, But this is actually totally stock, and this is the way that they came. We have the humbucker in the neck, and this, and obviously this typical tele single coil in the bridge, with all 6 saddles and everything, which is great for actually intonating. And it's got this cool kind of red burst, but then on the back it's more just a solid. Which again, I did not even know this was a model they made, but I came across this and thought, you know, what's going on with this one, and did some research, and sure enough, this is a really hard to find model that they did, and this is 94. So I kind of was able to determine this was one of Fender's first attempts at doing a higher end guitar in Mexico, which now is super common, but I feel like every time Fender announces their new range every year or two, there'll be some Mexico guitars that kind of price-wise are in the same ballpark as the American stuff, and people always get a little weird about that. And if you just look back on their price lists and the different catalog years, they've really always been doing higher end guitars in the Mexico factory that blur the lines. It's just that you don't see them as much as you either see the Mexico standard stuff or you start getting into the American stuff. So it's really fun to find these, and I always like this stuff because it truly is better than your baseline Mexico standard, whether the black label or silver label or whichever one you find. And the price difference isn't super crazy. You can still get into these for quite a bit less than even the cheapest American teles you'll find. If you have a chance to get a hold of anything in that kind of criteria, it always gets my seal of approval, and you'll get a lot of guitar for the money. Last thing I'll show here is not a guitar, and honestly, we did get a lot of other pedals in this week, but this is the first one that came to mind, so I figured we'd show this one. But this is a Digitech Whammy Wah XP100, super cool. I believe this to be the predecessor to the Digitech Whammy that we all know and love now. I think this came out just before that, and then we started getting into the more pitch shifty territory, so yeah, super cool. Not as crazy as last week. If you haven't checked that video out, please go check it out now. It was crazy, but still a lot of cool finds, and really stoked with everything that we got in. I hope you guys enjoy. Hope you enjoyed the video, and hope you enjoy the fresh finds when they get it to the site. If you end up with any of these guitars, please comment below and let me know, and hope you enjoy them. We'll see you soon.